Greetings, I'm Brian from RC Workboat Haven. Welcome to part 3 of the 1898 supply steamer build. In part 3, we're going to be working on the uprights that form the stanchions of the railings and also the sides of the hull. We're going to be framing out the shipping door openings. We'll be working on the panels that form the sides, and we're going to take a look at fenders and a number of other things that tie the whole boat together to bring it up to this stage. Hope you enjoy the video. We do a lot of work in this one. Thanks for watching. So here's the supply steamer with most of these uprights in position. I made them longer because they're just easier to work with and easier to measure based on the position of the top roof here. So to get these uprights in the right position, I wanted them to be parallel to the slope on the front of the pilot house and the main superstructure. Also had to be oriented on the bow in this direction here. The after pieces had to be sloped in as well here. There had to be tumblehome on the side of the model so that it was more realistic. When a boat was up against the wharf and it took on any heel, port, or starboard, we wouldn't want the delicate railings rubbing up against concrete and so on. So I did incorporate tumblehome all the way around on these uprights. One of the first things I did was fix the upper deck to the stem post with a screw, and that kept everything in alignment. I used 1.5-inch spacer blocks all the way along to get the upper deck to the right height. But I needed to have a reliable position to work with down here at the shear level. So I made some long strips of 3/32 square basswood, and I glued them to the top of the shear line all the way around the boat. And you can see that right here. So this gave me an accurate surface to CA glue the upright all the way around. So once I'd identified the first 3 set of uprights, here, here, and here, and I was able to get the right angle of tumblehome by measuring in here, and here, here, and here. So using a strip of basswood as a nice fair guide, I'm going to put in the last 3 uprights on both sides. Now I have the 3 uprights on each side trimmed and in place and marked. So let me show you how I glue these. I have all these uprights extending down the bulwark and sitting on the deck shelf that's molded into the hull. The deck shelf sometimes slants in a little bit more in different spots, so you have to trim off these uprights a little bit. They're all marked right here, so I know where to apply glue. I leave about 1/4 of an inch below the mark so that the CA glue will stick to this 3/32 square. Set it in like this. And just move it in to your mark. We're looking for a compromise. These 2 side pieces slope, and so you really want to just position it right in the center. Now get your CA glue and put a drop right here at the top and put a drop down at the bottom on the shear. Now swing the boat around to the other side. I have a pencil mark here and here. This one didn't require any trimming. Bring it through, here, down, and in. Take a look that it is up against the guide up top. If it isn't, use a wedge, and that wedge will push the upright up against our guide. And looking through here, make sure you're lined up with the post opposite. and then put a drop of CA glue here and here, and one down on the shear. So that was 2 of them glued in. I'll do the other 4, and then we're finished with the uprights. Now up forward, I'm going to remove that screw that holds the upper deck onto the stem. The final height of this deck left a gap here. I'm going to use a small square block as a filler piece. And I'm going to expand the stem right here with an additional block glued on. And that will fit like this. So now I'm setting up the sides of the top handrail. I'm using a piece of 3/32 by about 5 millimeters wide. I have the height set by these blocks, which are just a bit less than 1.5 inches. I've put a drop of super glue in each spot here, and that'll hold it all in place. And right here where the handrail joins together, I want to make sure that I have the exact curve. So I got a nice even curve there. That worked fairly well. So I'll go ahead and do the other side. Now it's just about impossible to bend this 3/32 thick by 5 millimeter basswood around this radius here without cracking it on this post. I'm getting a pair of pliers and getting the stock, and I'm just clamping down on it here and then bending it here like a lever until I hear a slight crack on the wood. I'll hold it right by the mic here and you can hear it. So I've done that here on these 2 radiuses, port and starboard, and I'll be able to fix this into place with super glue. So here are the final clamps on the stern piece of the railing side. I've got a nice curve on the starboard side and the port side, so it's nice and true. And I'm going to reinforce the other side here on each post. I'm going to use CA glue or wood glue, but I want everything nice and solid because tomorrow we're going to cut off the posts and we'll see what we've got. Now I'm going to use the jigsaw with a fine blade at low RPM. And I could make a fairly nice cut with no real damage. So that turned out fairly well. Don't know if you can actually see it with the camera, but there is significant tumble home to the sides here. None of this 1/4 inch square dowel that I cut off will go to waste. There's never anything thrown out at RC Workboat Haven. So now I'm going to take my 3/32 by 5 millimeter basswood strips and glue on the other side of the railing. So now I've got the inner side piece of the railing installed. I decided to just use a drop of CA glue on top of each post to hold it in place. Now up forward, I've already started with my capping. So I'm using 1/16 basswood here, and I just lay the pieces on top of the railing and put a clamp on them. Then I mark the outside with a pencil, and then I cut that curve using a knife. And there's our curve. Then I pick up my handy marking tool here and put a line along the curve, and then cut that out with a knife. And here's the piece we just cut. Set that up here on top of the railing. Put 2 clamps on it. I've made it so that there's a slight overhang here on both sides. I want that because I can sand it off really smooth later with sandpaper. Now I'll get all the cap pieces in place all the way around the boat, and then glue everything at once at the end. And here's the railing cap, all wood glued into place. All the clamps are set. We'll be able to sand that smooth tomorrow. So here's the handrail, all sanded smooth. I saved some of the fine sawdust from that job and added a bit of wood glue to it and mixed up kind of a paste. And I used it to fill some of these holes here. It's a lot less expensive than epoxy, and it certainly is strong enough. I've added a bit more wood here to the stem piece. It's now about 1 inch above the top of the handrail. I thought the hull was better proportioned once the superstructure was set in place, to have that a bit stronger. And as you can see, I've also done some work down here on these fenders. These fenders are like wooden poles, and they would slide along the gunnel and kind of confine any wear to the pole and to a small section of gunnel. These are a very prominent feature on these steamers, and in fact are one of the most obvious things about the appearance of the whole craft. So I thought it was very important to have them evenly spaced and in the right position. Now I can calculate where the loading doors will be all the way along the side and any other openings here. And it's pretty obvious why I wanted to get that water line on early, because it would be very difficult to visualize this next step without it. In each of the 8 spots, I've glued on a piece of, I think it's some kind of a hard pine. I've glued that on. That's 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/2 inch. I'll be using basswood along the sides here. So that fits flush, just like this. Inside the hole on the fender, I've got a piece of brass tubing, and that'll help it swivel easily. I have an 832 bolt that's about 1.5 inches long, and that will fit in like this with a lock nut on the other end. And then my paneling fits in like so. So I'm going to frame up the side to accommodate 3 shipping doors. One here, and one here. There's an access door that I'll be framing in, a stern here, and up forward I'll put one in the intermediate area here, and then another opening right up forward. So that's the general layout. Now I have the shipping doors all framed up. So let's take a closer look at that. Port and starboard, I have 2 openings up forward, one here and one here. And I have those openings the same width as the railing space. The 3 main shipping doors are larger in size, and they're all the same. Astern, I have 2 openings here, one port, one starboard, and they are quite a bit smaller. The large openings required the original uprights to be cut, and I used the same 1/4 inch square dowel to frame out the sides of the opening. The deck thickness was 1/8 of an inch basswood, and I added in another piece just below the deck of 1/8 thick. So we have a total thickness here now of 1/4 inch. I'm going to be fixing 3/32 basswood to the inner side of this framework. So the overall appearance will have the openings recessed inside of the side of the hull, and that should make them more noticeable. So starting up forward, I'll do the first one here. I'm going to pick up my piece, set it in place, and lightly put a pencil line on it. And now I've got a pretty good idea where to put the glue. And there we are, glued up. I'll reach in and put it in place here. And that looks pretty good. And I'll just make sure that I clean off any extra glue in here. So that's the method I'm going to use, and I'll go around the boat and do this part of the job. And here are the cargo doors all glued in place. Now to finish off the rest of the side, I'm going to be using 3/32 basswood cut on the end grain. This will require a lot less clamping pressure as I work my way around the side of the hull, which is curved. I've added a small piece of 1/16 basswood just inside that 3/32 square. That's going to give me a backup for wood glue because the pieces will fit right in here like this. So I'm going to pre-cut my pieces and mark them on the deck here. And then I'll trim my basswood to that line. And now I'll just add some glue here. Set my piece up. I've got 2 small clamps on here. And because this is pressed in on the end grain, it doesn't take much pressure to hold this piece up against the glue. So now I'll continue all the way along the boat. I'll have to put a few filler pieces in here, but we'll get it all done and then take a look. So here's the sides with the shipping doors and the paneling all in place. I filed the sides of the openings right here to make sure they're lined up with the railings. Using a wood awl, I pushed from the inside and located the 4 spots for the fenders on each side. I plan to paint this whole area white, and I'm hoping that the recess on these shipping doors will cast a shadow in the area here, and that will make them stand out without having to add a darker color. Now my next step is to add a 1/4 by 3/32 strip all the way along the shear line here. The basswood strips are just too tough to bend when it's 1/4 of an inch on the wide side. So I'm using the same old method. I'm going to place a piece of basswood up here, and I'm going to mark it from the inside on the deck. And then I'll cut out this line. And now using my marker tool, which is set to just over 1/4 of an inch, I'll make a line along that curve. And now cut that out. And here's our piece. And that's a pretty good fit. So I'll go ahead now and cut all the pieces I need for this strip and clamp them in place all the way around the boat. And here's the 1/4 inch strip, all glued and clamped in place. So I have that top piece roughly sanded. Now I'm going to coat everything with white latex primer sealer. This will lock all the little wood hairs in place. And here's the first coat of white primer sealer. I'm looking for shadowing here, and it seems to be working. So these indentations here do cast a shadow over that panel, and that makes the shipping door look more obvious. Next step, I'm going to get some masking tape. I'm going to run it along the hull here and paint the gunnel. One thing I like about latex paint is that it's easy to change the color and it's easy to clean up. And it's also very easy to repair scratches. Having colors now on the model helps me envision the proportions and size of the basswood I would use up here on this railing, for example. It helps it all come together for me. So that brings us to the end of part 3 in this build series. It's starting to look more and more like an 1898 supply steamer. In the next video, we'll be working our way up above the upper deck and doing work here. So don't miss that. We're on our way now. Thanks for watching.